Lavon Lewis.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. I think Dr. Jameson's assistant is on the line. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Would you please let her know we're going to go ahead and start the meeting, please? We've got a quorum, and we only have an hour here today.
Okay.
So, thank you. Have her announce herself when she comes on the line so we could mark her as attending the meeting, please.
Okay.
All right. It's a little after 12, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. I think we have enough members present to create a quorum. This is the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange meeting that has been noticed for here in Carson City and for our offices down in Henderson. I want to welcome you all here today. This meeting probably will only go hour and a half or so. I don't have any announcements other that for board members on the line, if you will put your phones on mute so that we don't pick up that background noise. And then I will be sure to call on each of you as we go through the agenda today to make sure that we're getting your questions and comments. So with that, if I could have Mr. Fisher take the roll and make sure we have a quorum.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Johnstone? She may be on mute.
I'm here.
Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Dr. Jameson?
She's just finishing up with one patient, and she'll be on in just a little bit here.
Thank you. Ms. Kerr?
Here in Carson City.
Dr. Ford? Mr. Wilden? Commissioner Kipper?
Here.
Ms. Teska?
Here.
Vice Chair Edkins?
Here.
And Madam Chair Smith-Campbell?
Here. Thank you. All right.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. We do have a quorum. We'll first go to public comment. Ms. Atkins, can you take a hand showing of for anyone that wants public comment in Henderson?
Yes, I think we have just one person who wants to do public comment.
Okay, and is there anyone here in Carson City? Looks like we only have that one person in Henderson. We do have something that was posted online from a Christopher Thompson, and I will ask staff to follow up on that. They're questioning the amount of the invoice that was sent. This person says they think that it was not as much as it should be. So they're following up. We'll have staff follow up on that then. So Ms. Atkins, if you can help me with Henderson, please.
Sure. Ms. Foley? You want to do it now or at the end? I think we're only having public comment at the beginning of the meeting or the end of the meeting. We're not going to do public comment before each section. So, yeah. And just press this so it goes green. There you go. And
hello, my name is Helen Foley, and I represent Delta Dental, and I am addressing the issue that is first on the agenda after the public comment, and it has to do with the fee that is charged. Right now, most of the proposals have been for a flat fee, and we find that that would be not good at all for all of those people that have the dental HMO. In fact, we think it's very discriminatory. And let me give you an example. For people who have the dental HMO, they would be paying 5% of their premium for this fee, while those that have the dental PPO would only be paying 2%. It would be like going to a hotel and paying a tax, and let's say you have a $1,500 room, the penthouse, or you may just have a $100. You would all be paying the same dollar amount if you went with this flat PMPM. What we suggest, and it's the way that the federal government is doing it with their exchange, is to have it as a percentage of the premium. Now, it's up to you as the body to decide what your needs are, how much money you need to bring in, and so that percentage would be determined by the amount that you think you would have. So whatever it is, if it's 2%, 3%, 4%, that's your decision. But we strongly encourage you to have one consistent percentage and have it a percentage of the cost of the plan, the premium per month, rather than the flat PMPM.
I just wanted to say that I came in at the beginning of her discussion. It's Dr. Jameson.
Thank you, Dr. Jameson.
Thank you very much.
And we also have Mr. Wilden joining us today. Thank you. So everyone on the phone, if you will please remember to mute your phones, and then I'll make sure I get to each of you as we move through the agenda. All right. Any other public comment in Henderson? And I'll say one more time, we've had a few people come in here. Anyone here in Carson City? All right. We'll close public comment for now and move on to the agenda item for the adoption of the fees for the per member per month. That agenda item was posted, and I think you might note if you've been following this, the agenda item and the contents of it have not changed. But I think Mr. Fisher's going to lead us with this, and we've also asked Mr. Kipper if he might assist us with it. So let's start with Mr. Fisher, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. The purpose of this report is to provide the board with information and recommendations regarding adopting the 2015 per member per month exchange fees. As Madam Chair stated, this is a report that has been presented to the board in a past meeting, so therefore I'm just going to kind of this is going to be kind of an overview from my perspective, and then that should set the table hopefully for a discussion with the board. So per 45 CFR 155-160B, a state must ensure that its exchange has sufficient funding in order to support its ongoing operations beginning January 1 of 2015. With that, further down on page 2, I'm on page 2, I just want to point out the table there on page 2. This was put together by staff. This is really the base dollar amounts, budget dollar amounts based on different enrollment numbers that the exchange would need to essentially keep the lights on. So this would include fixed and variable costs for each enrollment threshold, and plus it includes a 30-day reserve. What it does not include would be the individual billing that was taken out. It also would not include EFF costs. It would not, or EEF costs, excuse me, and it would not include any sort of marketing costs. So moving forward, during one of the board meetings when we were discussing this previously, the board had requested that we come up with 3 options, and also the board asked that we include costs for the EEF program as well as costs for marketing. So presented before you are really 4 options, and without going into detail on the 4 options, option 1 was at a 60,000 enrollment amount, 100,000, and then we have an option at the 150,000 enrollment amount. And then the 4th option was an option that staff put together. It's a presentation to the board, or an option that really aligns the PMPM fee amount with the federally facilitated marketplace. And so that's the 4th option that staff wanted to present to the board. So with that, I'd certainly like to open it up for any questions the board might have.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Fisher from the board? If they're not, we had asked Commissioner Kipper if he might take a look at this particularly because those carriers that are inside the exchange and outside the exchange need to work with these numbers, and we wanted to make sure that what we were doing didn't have an adverse impact or effect on those carriers. So if you might, Commissioner Kipper, do you want to tell us what your research has done over the last week or so?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Scott Kipper. In looking at this, there were a number of unknowns and there's a number of variables. So it's pretty tough to, kind of nail down a particular number. But some of the thinking that we've done at the Division of Insurance, I think it's reasonable given the track record of the exchange and the enrollment to be somewhat conservative. So we looked not much beyond the 60,000 enrollees, and we believe that if you have beyond 60,000 enrollees for 2015, that a lot of that will go towards those per member per month fixed costs at that point. As Director Fisher indicated, that the federal level is per member per month fees are going to be at 3.5% of the average premium. The division in our discussions with carriers have not landed on what that average premium is going to be for 2015. Carriers are still in the process of evaluating the experience for 2014 so far. They're not required to file their rates with the Division of Insurance until mid-July of this year. So for us to work on a basis of what the average premium might be is a little bit premature for us at this point. Now, having said all of that, we went back and looked at a development of a per member per month fee that would address and meet the costs that were shared with us by staff here at the exchange. And working from a PMPM of $13, that generates $9.36 million. If the fixed costs at 60,000 enrollees is at $6.33 million, that allows a cushion of $3 million to address EEF issues, marketing, increase the reserve if necessary, and also to address additional marketing costs. The $13 on the average of the current rate, average premium rather, of $377 is roughly 3.4%. So we are under the federal PMPM rate. So if there was a recommendation from the division, we should say that somewhere around $13, I think, is a fair assessment at this point, and that will allow us to meet the goal of the board to stay under the federal PMPM percentage. Having a specific number will allow our carriers to plan accordingly when they start doing their pricing. I think because it's under the federal level, it does assist our carriers in their development of rates both inside and outside the exchange. So with that, that's the thinking that the division has, and I would be certainly open to any questions that the board might have for us.
All right. Do we have any questions from board members or even our ex officio members?
Madam Chair, this is Leslie Johnstone.
Yes, Ms. Johnstone.
Commissioner, can you expand a little bit what you meant by having a specific dollar amount makes it easier? I am not clear how having $13 is easier for the carriers to work with than having $14 to work with.
Well, I think for the record, Scott Kipper and Ms. Johnson, thank you for the question. I think that having a fixed dollar is what I referenced was easier for them to figure rather than a percentage of premiums.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought the specific dollar amount mattered in their putting together the rates. I didn't get the distinction with the percentage. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Madam Chair, this is Lynn Atkins.
Yes, Ms. Atkins.
I have a couple of questions. The option 4, which is the percentage rate, though, that will end up being a fixed dollar amount too. Is that not right? Once we wait and see what all of the premiums are, and then take an average, and then there's a fixed amount, or is that going to be 3.5% on each different plan?
For the record, Scott Kipper, it would be as you described, but it would not be set until those rates are approved, which is the end of October, or excuse me, mid-October when they're released, so that it would be still a bit of a challenge for carriers to set those prices accurately.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a timing issue right now, is where we need to kind of fix that amount, and that amount, if we do the percentage, we're not going to have that number until it's too late. Is that what I'm hearing?
That was our take, yes. That setting a fixed amount would make it easier for carriers to determine what the add-on they need to have for those rates.
Thank you. And then what would the dollar amounts be for the QHP with dental and the standalone dental? Was there further calculations done on that? Because I know we've had some public comment and some questions here about that.
For the record, Steve Fisher. Lynn, are you asking that question based on the $13 that has been recommended on the table? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
I see here all of these have a dollar amount with QHP without dental, QHP with dental, and standalone dental. So I'm assuming the $13 is the QHP without dental. And then if I'm right, what would the QHP with dental and what would the standalone dental numbers be?
Ms. Atkins, if you'll give us just a second, Carrie's here with the computer that kind of calculates all this. Let her have just a minute and see if she can give us some numbers on that.
Ms. Atkins, for the record, Steve Fisher. With the $13 QHP without dental, the QHP with dental would be $13.83, and the standalone dental would be 83 cents.
Thank you.
Did you have any other questions, Ms. Atkins?
Not at this time.
Okay. Let me go to some of the members on the phone. Ms. Lewis, do you have any questions?
Well, I was just looking at the recommendation number 4, which is for $13.21. So the amount that is being discussed is a flat $13. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Marie Kerr, and I guess I'm really going to ask this of Mr. Kipper. Is it safe to assume, or is it not safe to assume, that 2014 average premiums, so depending upon a percentage, would be the same as 2015 average premiums, or, I'm asking you to project a little bit, sure. But would it be safe to assume that 2015 will be higher than 2014, or lower, or the same?
For the record, Scott Kipper, anecdotally, what we're hearing from our carriers, both here in the state, but what we're hearing across the country, is rates will increase. The question is, how much? There is, from the federal government, certainly some hope that the rates will not be as significant in an increase. Certainly, they would like to see under 10%. We've had some very high-level preliminary discussions with our carriers, and they're indicating that it will be at 10 or more, and they didn't say how much more.
Do you think it would be a better idea to go with a percentage as a basis of premium, or a set rate, given that uncertainty? For the record, Scott Kipper, and I think given the issues around trying to set a budget and look at numbers, certainly a fixed rate makes that a lot easier for staff to try to determine and project going forward.
we look at and wait until that average premium comes in and is disclosed in October, it'll be a real challenge to determine what we want to spend for EEFs, for marketing, and so forth.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this out there, and don't go crazy on me on this one. I know we already decided to put in EEF funding and marketing and advertising for 2015, but as I'm looking at page 2, and I'm a business person, and so I have to deal with there's what I want and then there's what I can get. As I'm looking at page 2, we have baseline amounts at different levels, and the most conservative way of doing it, this is no EEF funding, no marketing or advertising, and no individual billing. We have rates that are below that $13 amount that you were looking at. If we were to set rates at a certain, or PMPM fees at a certain amount, say $13, or we would go with exactly the different DOI's recommendation, and that's just my suggestion is we go with the DOI's recommendation, and then say here's our budget. You've got $3 PMPM for EEF marketing and advertising, and figuring out what we can do with that $3 PMPM. That might be a much more certain way to deal with it. I don't even know if we can go back and undo what we did, Mr. Belcourt. But I think that it might be a way to get at certainty in the PMPM fee, certainty in our budget, and it certainly would be cutting a lot of the marketing, advertising, and EEF funding, but it would be a way to get at certainty in our budgeting process and ensuring that our PMPM fees don't go above the federal exchange. And something that I didn't think about, just finally, before I shut up, is if the federal average premium goes up much higher than expected, if we match the federal exchange, we would be charging a lot more than having a set cost, and that might be a big factor in staying with our current structure and ensuring certainty with our current structure. So let's just throw that out there as thoughts for all.
I think the recommendation that Mr. Kipper gave us, and Commissioner Kipper, please jump in, his recommendation would give us more stability on it. I think what he's telling us is at $13 per member per month, if we looked at the target of 60,000 new enrollee, or not additional, but 60,000 enrollees, 2015, that we would have about $3 million in excess for EEF and the marketing, which would be, something that staff could work with, and we would have some flexibility within it.
Well, then, I do think that's a great recommendation, and I guess staff would probably have to readjust their numbers to determine how much we would allocate for our excess for our marketing and advertising and EEF. And you can come up with that in a subsequent meeting and let us know how we could go use that going forward. It seems to me to be a good conservative recommendation.
Madam Chair, Lynn Atkins.
Yes.
I guess I just have one question, or current question, which is if the rates go up more than we think, are we missing out on potential revenue to help support the exchange by picking a dollar amount? So just throwing that out there again for discussion. And I think definitely having a fixed budget for the EEFs and the outreach and programs is correct. Understanding that if we don't have the right amount of EEFs and we don't have the right amount of marketing, we're not going to get the people coming back to the exchange. So it's always the chicken and the egg, and I think we all know that, but just to keep that in mind as well. So I guess my pending question, though, is if rates go up either more than we think, or, I don't know. Are we kind of missing some revenue to support the exchange?
Madam Chair, for the record, Scott Kipper, and I think you've hit a very good question or point, is that by going with a fixed dollar amount and enrollment does go up, we will be leaving money on the table, but having a fixed rate does provide a certain level of predictability for the carriers as they fix the rates. If that rate is subsequently less expensive, the potential for having more enrollees certainly exists, which means that your 60,000 may increase, albeit small amount, but that it may provide additional PMPM fees.
Well, and if I might, I'm going to ask Ms. Eaton. Right now, our numbers during the special enrollment period have the QHPs that have been paid for. That number is at what number right now? I think it was pretty close to 35,000. We were approaching 35, I thought.
Yes, Carrie Eaton for the record. It is a little over 34,000 enrollees that have paid for a QHP so far.
Okay. So the 60,000 example that you're giving to us seems fairly reasonable at this point in time.
For the record, Scott Kipper, yes, it's a very conservative number. It would be difficult to project certainly what that number is going to be, given that we were looking at twice that for 2014. But I do believe that we're better off being conservative here than not.
Thank you.
May I, Ms. Campbell, just one thing. It occurs to me that if we go with a set PM fee versus a percentage, we're not leaving money on the table. We're leaving money in people's pockets, I think, is what we're doing. And so I'd rather prefer to do that.
I'm going to go back to the phone line. Dr. Jameson, do you have any questions or comments for Commissioner Kipper or anyone else on staff? If your phone's on mute, we're not hearing you.
I did. I just took it off mute. I'm sorry. No, I did not have any questions. I just wanted to agree with one of the last thoughts that were thrown out, that even though we're not shooting to be below the federal rate, that obviously if we could do it in future when the legislature looks at us, I think that would always look better, as they mentioned, if we hope to keep all of this intact, doing it locally. And I think that's always a little extra perk along with everything else we've discussed.
Thank you, Dr. Jameson. All right, any other questions?
Madam Chair, Lynn Atkins, I'm sorry, just have one more comment. I agree with Ms. Kerr. I think absolutely the goal is to have this run as lean of a machine as we can. But I also think we need to make sure that we are clear on the challenges that we currently have. We don't know what the outcome of the next open enrollment is going to be, and that 60,000 number again, which is a baseline, our very strong desire is that we would exceed that significantly, and that really is just a baseline to keep the exchange running. And so, we want this as least expensive possible for all the consumers. But again, just wanting to make sure that these baseline numbers that we're talking about and the difficulties we've had with our website are just taken into consideration, and everyone just kind of knows what we're doing here.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins. I think we all agree with you on that. If there are no more questions from board members, we've got a recommendation that came from our ex officio member, Commissioner Kipper. Is there a member that would like to entertain a motion?
This is Yvonne Lewis, and I would move that we adopt the recommendation from Mr. Kipper as to our per member per month payment.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
I believe that's $13 per member per month without dental, and with dental it would be $13.83.
All right, and
this is Dr. Jameson. I would second that.
Before you do that, Dr. Jameson, Ms. Lewis, if I might get you to include the QHP without dental, that would be at $13. QHP with dental is $13.83, and the standalone dental is 83 cents. If you could include that in your motion, then we will have all of the per member per month areas covered in that motion.
Okay, I believe I said the $13 and then the $13.83 was per member per month with dental, and so I'll add standalone dental at 83 cents.
Thank you very much. Now, Dr. Jameson. Dr. Jameson, do you still want to second that motion?
Oh, yeah, I just unmuted. I apologize. Yes, I would like to second that. I am in favor of that.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion and second on the floor. Is there any further discussion among board members? I'll ask Mr. Fisher to take a roll call vote for us since we are so dispersed here today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Johnstone?
Aye.
Ms. Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Jameson? Dr. Jameson?
Aye. Aye.
Ms. Kerr?
Aye.
Vice Chair Atkins?
Aye.
And Madam Chair?
Aye. So we have a unanimous approval of the per member per month fee. Commissioner Kipper, thank you, and thank your staff for helping us so much through this process. All right, next on the agenda is the review and ratification of the Deloitte assessment. And I believe everyone that's going to be speaking from Deloitte is here in Carson City. If you'll come forward, identify yourself for the record. And also so that individuals know at the conclusion of this report, I'm going to invite Xerox to come forward and make any comments that they would like to make about the assessment. So, Ms. Atkins, are you hearing me all right? I want to make sure that you're able to hear the discussion here from the testimony table as well.
Yes, I can hear you, and I'll let you know if we have any difficulty hearing from the testimony table.
Okay, thank you. If I could get all of you to identify yourself for the record.
For the record, this is Deb Saha from Deloitte Consulting.
I'm Kunal Shah with Deloitte Consulting.
And I'm Ivy Bella with Deloitte Consulting.
Whoever's going to lead the discussion, I think it'd be helpful if you get the microphone right in front of you. And then you can just move it back and forth. But you do need to get rather close to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, the board member. Deloitte Consulting is here to present you our assessment report, which I believe the report consisting of almost 90 pages have been submitted to you on Friday, I believe. And what we also created an executive summary of our presentation, and that's the second material that has been sent. This one has around actually a dozen slides, so 12 pages. And I'd like to ask board members, especially Madam Chair, if we can go with the executive version, the 12 pages, and then can dive into details as you seem fit.
I think it would be best to go through your executive summary, and then I think the 91 pages have been posted on the website since Monday, and I think the board members have had it since Monday, so I'm sure that there will be some detailed questions to follow.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm on slide 1, which is titled as the executive summary. So first of all, I want to thank the board member for your support and all the stakeholders. There are a number of people who have really worked with us collaboratively, including the carriers, the navigators, the Xerox partner. So we felt that we tried to position you and give you facts as we know. And the facts that we have covered is ended on April 11th, which is the third week of our meeting or our project. And I'm sure that things have moved on. Things have changed after that, both from the exchange perspective as well as Xerox perspective and other stakeholders' perspective. So, but I want to make sure that it's the timeline that the findings that we have is as of April 11th. So, as you know, we covered it in the last meeting the six areas that we covered: project management, governance, solution functionality, call center, technology from system development lifecycle also will be used as SDLC in our discussion, and then the technology more on the infrastructure side, and the security aspect. Based off our observations, we came up with three distinct options. One is remediate the current system, so go with what you have. Option 2 is pick one of the state-based exchange that has been successfully implemented, and then the third one is going to the FFM, federally facilitated marketplace. So those are the three basic options we are presenting to you. Any questions so far? I'm on slide 1. Slide 2.
Why don't we hold our questions till after your presentation?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Slide 2 is the 6 key categories that we have talked about from the point of view of assessment findings. So we have 2 phases: discovery phase and the analysis phase. So during the discovery phase, we've conducted 109 interviews, reviewed over 100 documents. We've done some sampling around end-to-end testing. We have reviewed coding development practices, standards. We have reviewed operations from a data center perspective and from call center perspective. So for the call center, we were meeting with our Xerox team and at Henderson, and had an opportunity to be there and review some of the things that have been done. From a analysis perspective, we have obviously looked at we've gone through all the observation analysis. We tested, analyzed, and looked at came up with the preliminary observations, which we presented to you I think a couple of weeks ago. And then this time we actually went with all the observations and came up with the 3 remediation options. I'm moving to slide 3. So this executive summary is more focused around the second half, which is the options phase, not the discovery phase. So as we said, there are 3 options. There are some common themes that came across regardless of the option. So a project management governance framework, that's really needed for monitoring, for control, and also making sure that we are meeting, or the exchange is meeting the stakeholders' needs. This governance that we're talking about is as a whole for the project, not necessarily for any particular team. It's overall exchange and also the other stakeholders, including Xerox. We believe that to make sure that the next enrollment is successful, there's a basic level of functionality that needs to be operational, accessible, and can meet the needs of the carriers and the other stakeholders. We believe that the call center processes, there are some improvements that could be made, would make it more successful from the perspective of customer satisfaction. We believe that the software development lifecycle, the practice, the methodology, that probably need to be a little bit more focusing toward the adherence of a good solution that ultimately delivers a reliable portal end users. From an infrastructure operations, we need to make sure that the support can be provided from Exchange, that includes, again, for project as a whole. And there is the security perspective, the governance security perspective. I think the controls that are needed for CMS to weigh in and make sure that we are meeting CMS guidelines, that needs to be looked at regardless of any options. And we can go into details in the next few slides. So option 1 is remediating the current system. That's in slide 4. There's a lot of words here, a lot of bullet points here. I'm just going to try to summarize for each of the threads, the 6 threads we talked about earlier. So project management and governance, again, I think we need to make sure that for option 1, we need to make sure we take a pause, right? Look at all the different development streams that are going on, different changes that are being looked at. We'll look at that and make sure that the exchange really prioritize the ones that are needed to be, and make sure that's focusing on next enrollment. We understand that there are things that are in flight, are in progress. We are not suggesting that we stop everything, but just take a pause. Things that need to move on should move on, and the things that have not started, let's look at it one more time and prioritize. I think the cohesive, the governance structure, I think it's all project work streams, and since that I've mentioned that earlier, that is paramount. That's very necessary to make sure that the next time and for next enrollment it's successful. When we talk about governance, we need to make sure accountability. We talk about project deadlines. We talk about making sure that everybody knows what they are expecting, and ultimately that expectations are being met. I do believe, the current staff that you have on the exchange side needs to be reviewed. I think towards the end of the slide, I have a slide, towards the end of the deck, we have a slide that talks about the additional people that you might want to consider, regardless of any options. So moving on to call center, and some of the call center, some of these activities for each of the threads we are talking about maybe in some cases are repeatable or repeating in different options, but I'll just mention a couple of them in the call center side. I think a workforce management playbook, we call it in Deloitte. I'm not sure other vendors may call it differently, different terms, but it's basically making sure proactive scheduling, forecasting, adherence to the staffing, and the making sure the call volume fluctuations are handled, are thought through in advance as to the extent possible. Additional training for the call center agents would be helpful to make sure that they can answer question right away instead of escalating it to the next level. I think these are few things that on the call center side can definitely make a positive impact from a end user customer satisfaction perspective. From a solution functionality, we talked about a little bit about prioritization. There's fast follow items, and there are outstanding defects. Some of the defects are production defects, some are non-production defects. So when we talk about the priority, just take a look at it from the perspective of the fast follow items, the changes that you're looking at, and also the outstanding defects. Prioritize those and make sure there is a plan that's everybody agrees to and is being tracked that way. Couple of other things on the carrier side, making sure the reconciliation is solid, and so there are no gaps in between what carriers are getting versus what the system is reconciling to. From a DWSS perspective, make sure the PDF submission, the design, look at it if there's things need to be made, so that speed of action, the application process can be improved. Look at that. Obviously, the broker and navigators, the portal, we believe, as when we looked at it, we didn't think that functionality is there. So would want the Exchange team to look at that and make sure that it's easier for the portal and navigators to get a better feel for what the solution looks like and the health of the solution, if you would, from their perspective. On the next slide, slide 5, on the system development lifecycle, SDLC. So making sure that we have coding standards for online systems, and for some of us who are a little bit into the technology world and the batch modules, etc. There's a standard there, so that the ultimate solution is successful and everybody is singing from the same sheet of music from a development team perspective. Now, I'm not sure. This is our perception of what we know. This is what we think we didn't find, but there may be something that we just don't know. I think the testing part is very important, and it's regression testing. So once you change something, we want to run those, whatever that, 50 scripts, for example, which has a good coverage of a solution. Anytime we change the solution, we need to go through that. To go through the UAT testing that we would like the Exchange team to focus on and get the right folks on their team to execute UAT, execute on performance testing, and making sure when the volume goes high, we are the system is ready for it. On the technology security side, we believe that there are 288 system or security controls that are identified by CMS. We want to make sure those controls are the status of those controls. Not sure we have our observation was may not be the current, the controls are current or not. I'm jumping over to slide 6, which is the benefits risk of option 1, but a lot of it is already integrated into the discussion that I had so far. So for the benefit of just moving this forward, I'd like to move to next option, which is option 2, slide 7. I think one of the things the exchange and state, obviously, will have to go back to the federal CMS and understand, get their approval, because this is going to be a new game, if you will. So that's important. It's part of the project management governance. The things that I talked about earlier applies to both option 2 and option 3. Each of these have their little nuances there, but in general, it's about being a good governance, having a governance structure, cohesive team building, accountability, transparency. I think those are key elements. From a solution functionality, if we, again, it applies to both option 2 and 3, which is you're riding a different horse. So you need to make sure that, anything that we bring from anywhere else need to still meet the needs of the state. There are some things that are very unique that needs to be looked at. For example, in the eligibility side, there are a lot of things that have been done on the eligibility engine on the DWSS side, which is not necessarily true in other states. The amount of work that has been done on the eligibility side. So there's this concept of, if you adopt something, there is a gap analysis that you have to go through and make sure that you make changes to the solution, minimal changes that's needed for next enrollment. Again, I think, new tool means new training, getting everybody up to speed. There is some marketing element of it. There is an outreach element of it that needs to be looked at. From our perspective, one thing we focus on, and like to believe that's something that we make it a mandate for our team, which is the post-implementation support. So when you go live, you still have the team there for at least 45 days, 2 months, whatever makes sense. Having people sometimes, in eligibility engine, we did that in the field offices. We had people going to the field offices. In this case, whatever the call center approach would be, having people in the call center, SMEs, that are, handling and supporting the agents right side by side to the extent possible. Again, I think the technology SDLC side we covered for the previous option also, just making sure we test. The more we test, the better it gets. But that's something that we need to focus on. I think the security side, which is next slide 8, I think it applies to all the 3 options, is making sure we look at the controls and making sure they are documented and managed, if you will, and we have a plan of action. It's called a document is called POEM, Plan of Action and Milestones. That's used by CMS. It's a CMS template. It's something that we need to get it updated and making sure that we get the approval from CMS. And I'd like to jump to slide 10, option 3. That's FFM, so federally facilitated marketplace. A lot of it would be the same as option 2. This is a question of bringing another tool, a different system, different solution for next enrollment period. So there will be a gap with where today versus the November 15th. So there is an existing system that still needs to be looked at, that still needs to be reviewed as to how much of changes you make there, how many still continue to make sure that you have a solution until the next system is implemented. And as it relates to getting a federal facilitated marketplace, there are things that are very similar to a state-based solution, but one of the things that in the federal facilitated marketplace, I'll just call it option 3. There is a concept of assessment versus determination model. So without getting into too much details, the assessment is where the assessment of APTC, QHP, etc. is done on the federal side, and you get the data from federal, whereas the determination model is where it's done by the state. So there are some nuances there, and certainly that needs to be looked at pretty quickly if that's the model you would want to adopt. From a solution functionality, one thing that's, again, I think I talked about it, alluded to a little bit earlier about the eligibility engine. There are a lot of things that has been done in eligibility engine that has to be stripped off because QHP, APTC, rules, etc. is currently in the eligibility system, in the eligibility engine, IE system, in the DWSS system. We need to make sure that that has to be removed. And once you touch a solution, you need to test it all the way. So there is some work there as well. I think I pretty much covered everything. One thing I would add to the infrastructure side, if we go towards the federal side, we want to make sure that you have sufficient, or the FFM, they have enough capacity to take on, more people. And obviously that's, something that we don't have any visibility on, but this needs to be something that the exchange will have to look at and make sure that they have enough capacity to take more people on their side. Madam Chair, I think I sort of highlighted some of the kind of the executive, from an executive summary point of view, this deck, and I'd like to ask our teammate if there is anything that I need to add.
No, Deb, I think you have it covered.
Okay. So
Do you want to go over the resource enhancement portion of the report?
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's the last slide, slide 12. So again, I think I want to make sure that this is just our anticipated FTEs in addition to what you have today in the exchange team, and some of these can be combined or broken in different ways. But in general, based on our experience, we believe that we need a project manager from a technical perspective, the technical project manager. Again, I think what we did for this slide, we have put the estimated duration for the next enrollment. We went to the end of December. This enrollment for December 2015, and plus additional, the project manager who needs to be there for kind of 2 years, if you will, or year and a half, if you will. So that person is going to be the overall, providing direction, decisions making authority, oversight, and working with different stakeholders, making sure plays the quarterback role from the exchange team. PMO is, I think we believe that a couple of folks, if we add dedicated to PMO, which is again going back to the things that we thought would be important to you, accountability, transparency, making sure the estimation activities that one would do it, and that would apply to vendors plus the other stakeholders that are involved, and making sure everybody's marching, helping the project manager to be successful. Technical side, on the technical design, artifacts and architecture, sort of the data center, that part of the equation, including looking at the coding standards, the standards that one would use for a good development project. That needs to be, that's someone, I actually put a couple of people in there to look at that. From the operations side, there's a lot going on in the operations. Currently, you are, still maintaining the system from the perspective of people still, enrolled and making sure that, we're looking at the operations perspective, both from a stakeholder and also from a solution perspective, making sure the system defects, the report, coordination, call center, UAT management, all that things we have talked about, we believe that are a good feature of a successful project. We believe that you need a few people there to handle that. And then last but not the least, I think is the testing. We really want user acceptance testing. I want to focus you as a user, not we as a vendor. I think sometimes we get busy with things, and timeline always gets ahead of ourselves. But that's very important to have the field tested by the folks who are ultimately going to use it. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. I'm going to open it up to discussion from the board members and also the ex officio board members. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about the detailed report. It looks like we have people at the testimony table that can address questions for us. Is there anyone that would like to start with questions? And Mr. Kipper.
I'm sorry, I'll defer to Ms. Kerr.
Quick question. Have you or can you work with our staff, do we still have budget for it, to maybe put together more detailed descriptions of the positions at the staff which we may need to implement and add to have a well-functioning exchange? If you have those job descriptions, that would be very helpful. If you can spend some time developing it. I don't know if we have budget to do it, but that would be, I think, a very helpful exercise to ensure that our staff is adequately, that we have adequate staff on our exchange. Thank you.
Absolutely. Not only from a vendor perspective, we'll be able to help you out to point some of the other states where, I think might be additional help that you may need, and we can facilitate that.
Commissioner Kipper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Scott Kipper. I want to build on Ms. Kerr's question. The resource enhancement page, does that apply regardless of which option is chosen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Atkins, do you have any questions down in Henderson?
Yes, I have a couple of questions, and I guess I just first wanted to say that I think the discussion about kind of a plan B came up at our February board meeting, and I just wanted to acknowledge and thank both my colleagues on the board and exchange staff for what I would describe as lightning speed getting this full assessment done. I mean, I think we're just about 11 weeks out from that meeting, and the fact that we've had all of the meetings that we have had, all the public meetings, this assessment in our hands right now is terrific. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank everyone who's been working really diligently to get this done. I guess I think I have one broad question, and it might be a rhetorical question, and I don't know who's best to answer it, but for option one, my overall question is, can this even really be done? I mean, I see that there's suggestions, there's risks, there's pros, there's cons, but I keep going back to if the folks at Xerox could have fixed and remediated the system, they would have, and if they didn't know there was all of these problems, then can they remediate the system? So I look at this and it validates, I think, everything we've all kind of known, and I think it's also shed some light on things we didn't know, and it's, troubling to see it all in black and white, I guess, but is this really fixable? And I don't know who can answer that question, but is this really fixable, and is it really fixable by open enrollment? Or is this not a realistic option?
Deb Saha from Deloitte. I don't have an answer to that. I just don't know enough whether it can be fixable or not. We have done this journey for only 5 weeks. There are other folks who have been here for a longer period of time. I'm sorry to not answer it straightly, but I just don't know if it can be or not. I don't know enough.
The folks at Xerox have asked to speak here in Henderson. Yeah, go ahead. Madam Chair, is that okay for?
No, we were going to open it up for Xerox to make some responses to the report, and I don't know.
Okay, so we can wait on that.
Ms. Atkins, I think that's part of the dilemma that we have is, we've got some options here. I don't want to short circuit the discussion. We have got 3 options that Deloitte has put before us. I don't know that those are the only options that the board can look at, but I would like to suggest that before this meeting is over, that the board directs staff to do a cost analysis for us on all of these options. If there are some other options that we're missing, I would ask staff to bring that forward to us. But I don't think that any of us are in a position to make a recommendation today until we get a cost analysis that goes with it. And I really am very appreciative to Deloitte. I know that we asked you to speed this up for us, and you were able to do that. I don't think we were expecting this report for a couple of more weeks. So again, thank you for doing that. And I thank Xerox for cooperating with the fast track of this as well. But I too am alarmed with 91 pages of findings here. As some of it, like Ms. Atkins said, I'm sure that all of us were aware of. There are some things here that maybe we're not technical enough to have had the sophistication to ask the questions on it, but I think all of us are concerned. I'm sure Xerox is concerned. Ms. Kerr, do you?
Madam Chair, Lynn Atkins, so I agree with that. I'm not suggesting that we decide anything today. I don't think we are deciding anything today, but for evaluation and as we digest all of this, I think if money and time were not an issue, this would kind of be easy. But money and time are an issue, and our backs are up against the November 15th open enrollment and also our funding options. So I understand that, and I do think we are going to need to see from staff how much things are going to cost. But the additional piece of information is the information in this report, and that's why I was just trying to see what the realistic possibility is of option 1. It sounds like option 2, kind of starting from scratch and reusing or building a new system or reusing a system that's working in another state, is something that could work if we had time. So I was trying to get a little bit more detail about option 1 and is this a realistic option?
I'm going to open it up for other questions from board members. Ms. Johnstone on the line, do you have any comments or questions about the report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First, I also want to thank Deloitte for the work that went into this and everyone's cooperation in providing them the information on a timely basis. It is in some ways validating of what we were worried about, and to that end, I'm disappointed about where we are. That said, I wonder if Deloitte would have an opinion about the order of risk, from the lowest risk to the highest risk of the 3 options that they presented, and that with the framework of not knowing what the cost is. So I guess cost for today would be off the table, and looking for a November 2014 start date. What is the lowest risk option in your opinion, and the highest risk option?
Deb Saha from Deloitte. As part of our of statement of work that we've done, we actually, what we were asked to do is to really put things on the table as options. And I don't think it's fair for me at this point to categorize those risks just from our point of view. Would be interested if it's more of a joint discussion, because I don't know what option 3 looks like. I don't know what the risks are. Option 2 could be different systems which have been implemented by different vendors. And of course the current system, we've gone into as much as we could through our interview process and the document review process. It's really we are not in a position to categorize, prioritize risks versus benefits. I think this is something that we have struggled because we don't know enough to do that. But certainly, there are things where we may have a better opinion if it's option 2, and if it's something that we know we implemented, and that's certainly we have a better point of view because we know more about it. But the others, we really don't. So I think at this point, I would say that they're as equal as anything else. I'm sorry.
Marie Kerr, I appreciate people who tell me I don't know when they don't know, because it tells us where we need to look. And so thank you for your candor. We do appreciate that. In terms of a staff report, I'd like to see 3 areas: cost, funding, and feasibility. What is the cost of each option? Specific ideas and concerns regarding funding. And finally, feasibility. Is it something that can be done? And if you don't know, and you can't tell us, in the short time that we give you, we'd like to know and what steps you could take to find out feasibility. So, thank you.
Right. I'm going to go back to the phone and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions or make comments on the report. So, Dr. Jameson, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't at this point. I was just wondering, did you say Xerox is going to speak to the report right now?
I think they will after we conclude this part of the review of the Deloitte assessment.
Yeah, that's what I'm most interested in hearing, is their feedback to what has been put out here today.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis?
No, I don't have any questions at this time for the report, but I do have one question for Ms. Kerr. I believe she said she would like to get a 3-part report concerning cost, and I couldn't hear what the second item was, and feasibility, I think, was the third. So if she could just tell me what the second point was of her statement, I would appreciate it.
I'm sorry, Lavon, I don't always speak into the microphone. It's funding. Where's that money going to come from?
Cost, funding, and feasibility. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. How about from our ex officio members? Ms. Teska, do you have any questions or comments?
I think Ms. Kerr actually covered what I was interested in. In particular, I think it's not just the cost; it's where would we be able to access funds to implement any of these, and then I think feasibility is a critical element as well. So I think she covered what I was interested in following up on.
Thank you, Commissioner Kipper.
No, nothing really to add other than I know that time is of the essence. I know that the division is already working on product approval, rate review, and rate approval, so that if there is a change, to go to either option 2 or even 3 or 3A, where we become a partner with the federal marketplace, that we need to make that decision post haste.
All right. Thank you for that comment. And maybe for staff, timeline on that as well as the 3, and that's probably part of the feasibility, a subset of the feasibility part. Director Wilden had to go to a 1:00 meeting. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make any comments, but I'm sure we'll get some feedback from him later today. Ms. Atkins, back to you. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss before we ask
not from
Xerox to
Deloitte.
come? Okay.
No, not from Deloitte. I'm fine, thanks.
Okay.
Would you like the Xerox folks to step up to the mic now?
Yes, and I think we have Xerox folks here in Carson City. I don't know who's taking the lead on this, but if you will stay close by if we need to have another response from you, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm assuming, Mr. Hamilton, since you are here, that you will start us off.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. David Hamilton from Xerox. Greg Vitiello is in Henderson, and he'll take the lead. Myself and Dan Green, who the board has met, will be here for support.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Vitiello from Xerox, and first I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in the review process and to have the opportunity to respond to the Deloitte assessment. We appreciate certainly the feedback that we received from Deloitte during the assessment. Many of the recommendations that Deloitte has made in their report are in line with an independent review that a third-party vendor did for us. So we're happy to see that many of the recommendations are in line. We've been working for the past several months to begin to remediate and to work to implement many of those recommendations. And many of those recommendations not only have come through Deloitte or through independent assessments, but they're recommendations that have come from the exchange, from the board, as well as others, brokers and navigators. We have put in a new governance structure along with a program assurance. And the main reason for that is to help us in identifying any gaps that exist, to improve overall access for consumers to healthcare, and to continue to make progress in developing and delivering the system. Since April 1st, when the special enrollment period began, we have successfully enrolled 10,000 additional members. And that means when I say enrolled, they've also paid, and we've sent them on. The total enrollment, from a paid perspective is over 34,000 today, and we're well on our way to meeting the exchange's goal. Much of this success is due to the overall improved system availability of 99.95%. Communications that we've worked with the brokers, the enrollment assisters, and the carriers, and many of the new system features that we put in as a result of the special enrollment period. These continued improvements are helping us to meet our collective goals and preparing us for the 2015 enrollment period. As I've stated many times before, and will continue to state, we are very committed to Nevadans. We are very committed to continuing to improve and make this right. We are continuing in our efforts to improve the overall system, and we're looking forward to working with the exchange and the board and Deloitte in order to continue on that path to improvement as we prepare for the 2015 enrollment period. And with that, I'd be happy to take any comments.
Do we have any comments from Mr. Green or? No. Okay. All right. I will open it up for questions to Xerox from board members. Any comments from any of the board members on the line? We'll start with Dr. Jameson. Dr. Jameson, if your phone's on mute.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying. Did you have any questions or comments?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was a no, none. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Lewis?
No comment.
Ms. Johnstone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just ask a pointed question of Xerox whether or not there are any findings in the report that you would take exception with.
Ms. Johnstone, David Hamilton for the record. We've got the report, as did you, within the last probably 96 hours and are still parsing it a bit. I think there are several very constructive comments and elements in the report. There are a few things that we would take exception with. We're in the process, just as you've chartered staff. We've chartered our staff to go through it, and we'll work collectively with Deloitte and with Exchange staff over the next few days to sort out any nits and points of disagreement. But we think the exercise is healthy. We think the improvements in governance, for example, doing some of the additional testing activities, getting more engagement, some of the resource ideas that were called out, we think are all constructive. And again, in terms of the broad theme, we, as Mr. Vitiello has commented, we're active already in terms of working for 2015, and regardless of what option you select ultimately, we've got to keep moving hard and as swiftly as we possibly can, and that's Xerox's intent.
Thank you.
Ms. Atkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm just going to go back to my question that I asked earlier and proposed earlier. I hear that, yes, a lot of these are constructive and they are just so vast as well. I mean, there are just so many issues and problems in every category. And I don't hear anything different than I think we've been hearing over the last few months, which is we're working really hard. We really want to do this. We're really trying. We've made a couple of improvements. And yes, and I see that the open enrollment numbers are better. I definitely see that. I am not blind to that. But there are, the report seems overwhelming to me. And I really am not hearing anything that all of these issues are going to be resolved well before open enrollment. So testing can be done. No testing's been done. I mean, not going through every piece of this. It's just vast. The number of issues are vast. And so and now we're at, 4 months from open enrollment, 5 months from open enrollment. Can this be done?
Ms. Atkins, David Hamilton for Xerox. While the list may in fact look daunting, what I would tell you is we are doing testing today, right? The report calls out a need to improve that testing. We have infrastructure and we report on infrastructure stability today. And I think those reports actually show a quite positive trend from December, January to where we are today. So it does in fact look daunting, and I can appreciate that. My response to you would be that when you get under the covers and start to look at the outputs in terms of the progress that we've made over the last several months, I am actually less daunted. It calls your attention certainly to things that have to be improved, but I think those things are doable and achievable. And again, some of the output measures, including the open enrollment measure, I think is one of those output measures. So I would keep calling the board's attention. And again, this is not an attempt to obfuscate. This has actually given us a good opportunity to actually look beyond just our own local context and setting. We've worked with Deloitte. We, in fact, are engaged in some of the other states. And so we've been able to spend time with the team and with the exchange staff to help offer a bit more detailed information about some of those gaps. So we want this to be a very informed process, a very transparent process. And yes, we're confident that we'll continue to make progress and set 2015 up for a very different stage and basis than 2014. And again, I would call your attention to those output metrics that I think are more indicative of that. These are important infrastructure statements in this report, and they all must be tended to to varying degrees. But again, right now I would describe to you that we've got a team that's come a long way, and our job is not done, but we are continuing to make progress and to do those things. Again, we're not waiting, by the way, for a linear point of fix to where we are today to start 2015 activity. 2015 activity for us has already started. And that goes to the requirements, the carrier setup, all of the things within the system that have to be done. So as I said, wherever we get to over the next few weeks in terms of evaluation of options, we've already chartered a separate set of work to start on those 2015 activities. And that's the type of proactive step that I don't think we could have made 90 days ago. But I do feel much more comfortable and confident that we're able to do it today because of the progress that we've made.
Thank you. If I could just ask a follow-up question, and I'm not sure who can answer this, but could we get a little bit more detail about the progress that's been done with the carriers? Because that's the other side of this equation, obviously, than the consumer end. And there has been just a whole host of issues with the carriers, both outlined in this report and also talked about at some meetings. So could someone address the progress that's been made with the carriers?
And I'd actually like to ask Mr. Green to respond.
Daniel Green for the record. I think last time I sat before the board, my primary focus was around the aggregate billing transition. So over the last couple of weeks, the response to the top three priorities, I think I mentioned that there was an initial research point that said, hey, how can we transition this? And what are the key milestones? The feedback was universal. 1 is complete the data reconciliation. 2 is stabilize the delinquency process. And 3 is complete the EDI testing cycle. So to a specific carrier, I will never say that we're done with any reconciliation analysis. On a day-to-day basis, we continue to pattern our process of articulating any variances between the EDI transmissions and the actual cash. It's unfortunate our situations relative to a pocket of our cases for advanced premium tax credit continue to require us to do accounting credits on cases, and that complicates our process. I'd like to think that some of the working sessions with the individual carriers as well as carriers as a group have articulated a better way to read the data we are presenting to them. I feel comfortable that over the last couple of weeks that we're getting close for what I characterize as part 1 of a 3-part reconciliation. Part 1 is really making sure that the data we have sent to carriers on the EDI 820, which is the payment files that directly relate to the effectuation of enrollment, align with our ACH transactions, which is the cash associated with those premiums. That's not to say, however, that on a go-forward basis we don't have a lot of work to do. So as part of the conversation next week, May 8th, where we'll walk through some of the milestones for that aggregate billing, the primary focus will be on the timeline associated with getting to quote-unquote done with data reconciliation, quote-unquote done with stabilizing the delinquency, and quote-unquote done with the EDI cycle, and specifically, I mean the EDI cycle relative to changes and other elements that would come as a result of a qualifying life event, some functions that have recently been implemented into the HIX. I feel constructive and positive about the interactions with the carriers, but by no means I think have we dug out. I'm excited about that opportunity. I think engagement from the carriers has been extremely constructive over the last couple of weeks.
Ms. Kerr?
Okay. Within the next 2 weeks, can you give us a point-by-point response as to how you're going to fix, and if you're already taking steps to fix, what you're doing to fix each item that's brought up as a fail or problematic? A timeline that you will take to fix each item that's problematic, and work with our project manager that we'll get to meet each and every item that's a problem, to ensure that timeline is being met, along with the ongoing work to ensure that re-enrollment is successful. Is that something you can do to put together that timeline and the response?
Ms. Kerr, David Hamilton for Xerox. Yes, that process has actually already started.
And when should we expect a point-by-point response. It's side-by-side would be really helpful for our comparison.
Yeah, we'll have that done by the end of next week.
Okay, thank you. I guess my comment is the report showed to me that there are some really fundamental flaws within the BOSS operating system. And I think led me to the conclusion that the system that Xerox has right now is fairly fragmented, and the project management side of it seems to be fairly immature. What I would like to see from you is maybe a follow-up to what Ms. Kerr has asked for, is if you see weak links within your management system, what are you going to do to change that to get a stronger management system in to make this work?
Madam Chair, David Hamilton, for the record, we can bring that back to you.
Let me ask council a question here. This is notified as a review and ratification for the board. Do we have to ratify this report or just accept it? What's your counsel on that?
Well, the term ratification implies acceptance after somebody else has accepted it, but I know that's a rather particular interpretation. So either acceptance or ratification would meet the agenda requirements.
Okay. If there are no more questions from board members to Xerox or to Deloitte, I think we will need a motion to accept the report that's been presented to us today.
Lynette can so moved.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll make a second.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jameson. All right, let's do a roll call vote on this since we're in different locations.
Ms. Johnstone? Excuse me, Ms. Johnstone?
Aye.
Ms. Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Jameson?
Aye.
Ms. Kerr?
Aye.
Vice Chair Edkins?
Aye.
And Madam Chair?
Aye. So the report, the assessment has been accepted by the board. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your coming to discuss your reaction to the questions and the assessment. All right, next item on the agenda is discussion of possible agenda items, dates, and times. I think we've given staff a couple of different tasks, which I do not believe you're going to be able to come up with cost estimates by May 8th. So why don't you get back to us when you think a reasonable time is to come up with the cost, the funding, and the feasibility portion of these options. If there are any other options that you want to bring to our attention, would you do so at that point in time?
For the record, Steve Fisher, yes, we will do that, Madam Chair.
Now, were there any other items that board members had asked that we have not gotten on an agenda that's a pending item for the board?
I'd be interested in the status of the executive director search, a status update of enrollees and any issues that we may have with enrollment that are ongoing. A status update. Actually, sorry, we already covered that third one. Lynn, is there anything else that we're missing from priority lists that you can think of?
No, I think that covers it.
Let me ask Ms. Johnstone, I know you had a pending item. Let's make sure that we get it to staff.
I may not be thinking the same thing. I was going to ask, it doesn't have to be for the May meeting, but certainly for June, we're going to need to give staff direction on adjusting the budget to meet the per member per month assessment that we voted on earlier.
All right. Are there any other items that board members wish to bring to the attention of the staff? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Is this for the May 8th meeting, or is this for a potential meeting before May 8th?
What? No, our next meeting is scheduled, what, a week from tomorrow?
Yes.
That's our regularly scheduled monthly meeting. So, I mean, if a question's asked today and they can bring that back as a response to us on the 8th, I would ask them to do that. If they can't, if they would bring back a timeline as to when that response will be ready.
Great, thank you.
All right, if there aren't any other comments, just note for the file next May 8th, and that meeting is on Thursday. It will be here in Carson City and in Henderson, and that meeting starts at 1:30. So that brings us to public comment. Do we have any public comment in Henderson? Doesn't.
No.
All right, thank you. How about here in Carson City? All right. That brings us to adjournment of this meeting. Again, our thanks to Deloitte and Xerox and to the staff for putting together all of this so quickly. I know that you've had a lot of other things on your plate other than this, but we really, really appreciate it. So thank you, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Barbara. Bye.